And to date, about 32 million people have been diagnosed with COVID. And we're really coming up to, the mark of 1 million people dying. Today, it's 983,000. And as I've said on many occasions, we can count those that have died, but we are in no way able to account for the grief, the sadness of families and friends of all those that have died, and also those that are really still suffering from the functional deficits of COVID-19. We have an outstanding town hall this morning, and it's come together with the leadership of Eduard Jongstra from UNFPA. So it's going to be a bit of a different format. I'm just going to introduce Eduard, and then he will introduce his colleagues. IFA stands alongside and works with many UN agencies, and we're delighted, Eduard, this morning that you brought some of your colleagues to really showcase, what they're doing in various countries, but also put on the table for our town hall attendees what needs to be done and what is being done. So let me just introduce you very briefly, Eduard. You are the Regional Advisor for Population and Development with the United Nations Populations Fund in the Eastern Europe and Central Asian region. Andra has put your bio in the chat box, which is extensive. So I hand the floor over to you, Eduard, so that you can say a few words and introduce your colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. This is a great opportunity for us to show more or less more of what is going on at the country level and also at the regional level. Allow me first a few words to explain the title of this session. It is called Demographic Resilience in Times of Crisis. First of all, the reference to crisis, yeah, it's obvious we are in a crisis with regards to the COVID pandemic. However, the title also refers to a different type of crisis, and that is a crisis that many of the countries, especially in our region, but not exclusively in our region, are perceiving, because sometimes it is not actually a real crisis, but in the eyes of many governments, it is. And that is a crisis of impending population decline. In other words, the result of low fertility, outmigration, and in conjunction with that, a rapidly aging population. A lot of our work is focused on these situations. And I will not go into very much detail on that, because then we will be talking for hours. But in response to these situations, which we have been actually responding to for years already, but we brought it together under an umbrella, and the umbrella is called our Demographic Resilience Program. Marta will be talking more about it, along with another regional initiative. So I will not really say much more than this. It is just that we have been working on these topics for quite a number of years. We have learned a lot ourselves in this regard, and we have been trying to bring it together. We are trying to bring it together under the umbrella of this Demographic Resilience Program, which is aimed at supporting countries in responding or adjusting, or mitigating, however you want to call it, to these perceived or real demographic crises. Okay, let me move on to introducing my colleagues. I will do it in reverse order of speakers. So that the one is mentioned first is the one who will be speaking the last, but that does not imply any sort of preference. It just happens to fall that way. The last speaker today will be Zeljko Blagojevic. He has been with us in the country office of Bosnia and Herzegovina since 2016. And I would say that his main, in my eyes, his main contribution there has been the support to processes of the development of policies on aging in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in a, well, you could say a more practical manner, the development of a network of healthy aging centers. This has been so successful that several other countries in our region are working towards replicating the model that was developed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then we will move on, before Zeljko, Lila Bakradze will be speaking. She is the head of our country office in Georgia, and she is in that role since January 2020, but has been with UNFPA for more than 15 years. She is by training a medical doctor, but you would not say that if you see how much effort and initiatives she has been developing with her colleagues in the country office with regards to the general area of population and development, and specifically with regards to older persons. She will be speaking with us about their initiative, primarily focused on older persons in rural areas of Georgia. Before Lila, we will be hearing from Eduard Mihalas. He is a program analyst on population and development at UNFPA in Moldova, and he is leading the work, UNFPA's work in promoting rights-based and data-driven demographic policies, and in advising the Moldovan government on actions in regards to a growing older population. Now, I would like to add to this, he did not put it in his short bio, but I felt the need to add a few lines to it, that he has been very successful in mobilizing resources for UNFPA's country program. And perhaps more importantly, he has contributed to an extraordinary strong working relationship between the Moldovan government, national academia, think tanks, CSOs, and UNFPA. It is extraordinary, and it has helped a lot to the impressive achievements that UNFPA has realized in Moldova. Sorry for sounding like an advertisement, but it's almost unavoidable. We will start, however, today with my dear colleague Marta Diavolova. She is a regional advisor on strategic partnerships at our regional office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. We are located in Istanbul, but she is at the moment in Sofia. Marta is a Bulgarian national. Under her portfolio in the regional office, she is coordinating work with key partners in the region, too many to list right now. And she is coordinating the work on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the ICPD Program of Action and its review processes. Prior to joining the regional office, Marta spent more than 20 years working in Bulgaria at the UNFPA country office and with WHO. And with that, I would like to hand over the floor to Marta, who will be talking to us about some regional initiatives in the area of aging. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduard. But before I start, I want to express thanks to Jane and to Andra for organizing and inviting this, and also my gratitude to all participants, because I'm here also to learn. So I hope through the exchange, we will take away some ideas as well as share our work. And maybe what is important in preparation for today, I just realized my first background is actually midwife. And when I started this career, I never thought that I will be speaking on aging issues and I will be working on those issues. I was dreaming of performing deliveries, and I did this for some time. But then this year actually is the year of nurse and midwife. And on the International Day of Older Persons, We are going also to celebrate the commitments, the healthcare workers. So I'm today with mixed feelings and sharing the experience and pride, but also professionally. Very inspired that more professions and more people should be involved in the issue and support the mind shift and changes in the society. So let me pick up from where Eduard, we are ended, and we are the agency, UNFPA actually, is part of the UN family. Maybe for some of you, it's not a first name you will recall speaking of UN, but our mandate actually is very broad, covering from demographic issues, data collection, analysis, policy making related with those issues, addressing sexual and reproductive health, but also human rights and gender equality, gender-based violence, harmful practices. We also invest resources and technical assistance for addressing the needs of young people and their participation in decision making. So in this sense, the intergenerational conversation is very much present in our programs and efforts. We work with a lot of partners, and I'm delighted to see some of them on the screen, Sylvia, Alexander, and some more, because the screen is small, so most likely I'm missing others who are connected for this call. And when I worked in Bulgaria, I still remember the call from the president's office invited to the Security Council, which usually deals with military issues, to come and join a meeting on demographic issues and demographic changes in Bulgaria at that time, with a concern that the country is disappearing and what can we do to address the issue. So here I am today to speak about demographic resilience program, which actually after 20 years, I'm delighted to hear that the demographic changes are now today recognized as one of the mega trends in shaping our common future, which affects not only Europe, not only Eastern Europe and Central Asia, but it is something around the world that not only as a electorate, but as well-being and society performance in terms of development opportunities in front of individuals is very much a topic and concern for many governments. Countries are experiencing different changes, and in Eastern Europe, what is very much a concern is related with the aging societies, but also with the decline in some of the countries of population. And this also is hand in hand with the accelerated migration. In the PrEP meeting, we just discussed that healthcare workers sometimes very often are leaving the countries of Eastern Europe, moving towards West, leaving the system with a great challenge. In other instances, young people are leaving. So this is something which Europe and Eastern Europe and Central Asia are facing. So urbanization processes and how people fit in the urban or city context, how their lives are being affected with these processes is something that we are very much investing. Early this year, recognizing and harvesting the more than 20 years experience in Eastern Europe, we kicked off a demographic resilience program that actually aims to further support the countries, being governments, national stakeholders, civil society, engaging in dialogue with the business and industries, how they are preparing and supporting, so that we support processes that build understanding of the demographic changes, also support the anticipation of some of those shifts, as well as adapting to the population dynamics that are experienced in the countries, which aim at well-being and prosperity for individuals and societies. So how this program works? It has several pillars, which actually will link me with the aging investment that we are predominantly doing these days due to the COVID-19. So the demographic resilience program looks at 3 areas very extensively and comprehensively with integrated approach that we analyze and support the data collection, the generating the figures and analyzing the data to inform our decisions in the projections and prospects for development for the societies. We also developed tools, equipped ourselves and partners with analysis, research work and findings that can inform in anticipation and prognosis and projections of the future development of the respective country. We foster series of efforts that aim at sharing experience between countries, transferring knowledge, bringing together and convening meetings for the academic community and linking the doers and those who are the scholars from their findings and prognosis, how this can evolve, so that we shorten the connection between the academic community and policymakers and translating this into a specific implementation at national level. Last but not least, in our attention is the policy design, monitoring and evaluation, so that how policies serve the people's rights and needs is critical in our efforts. From here, when the pandemic started, I want to move on to the investment of the program that primarily is at the focus of today's conversation. With several partners from within UN family, as well as Help Age International, an NGO who we all know well, we were discussing a couple of months ago, what can we do better to respond to the enormous needs that are emerging from the pandemic in the countries across Europe and specifically Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So together with the colleagues from WHO, from UNEC, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, with the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, within the system of UN, we have a lot of structures and a lot of entities, but we also collaborated with some of the issue-based coalitions that are related with health and well-being, so that we employ all the opportunities and arms of the UN system. We invested energy and thoughts, how can we strengthen the rights and dignity of older persons, through health, social care, and enabling environment in Europe at the times when pandemic is hitting it. So we had to make choices, and we organize our aspiration and ambition for support, as well as the know-how, the knowledge, the technical expertise we can put at the table, hand in hand with resources and the structures in place. So we framed 3 areas which we thought are important to be given equal attention by ourselves and invested in our work. So one area which was recognized is the preparedness and the emergency response to mitigate the risk of older persons during the pandemic. And in this context, we look at the long-term care. I know Leila will be speaking for those who are alone living. So they are in life can offer different circumstances and scenarios. So what we can do as a UN system to be better in servicing the people in respective countries was the cornerstone of our thoughts. So ensuring that older persons are having access to preventable services, to quality care. Very often the emergency put aside and pressure on the system to respond to the crisis, but then some chronic illnesses can be neglected. So this was also part of our thinking and efforts to be addressed. Just to illustrate one example. The second direction, which we thought that it's important with the aging society in Europe, and I think it's not coming as a surprise, that
Marta,
sometime, yes.
Marta, yeah, look, I'm Look, this is fantastic, but could you move forward and wrap up, because I'm very worried that we're not going to be able to have, you know, the
Okay.
yeah. But my apologies for interrupting you also.
No worries. I can speed up. So the second area which we thought that it's in changing the mind shift and understanding on the how we provide services to older persons, so that we start building up the conversations with the reforms and adapting to the changes and demographic shifts. And the third area, of course, is related with the rights, dignity, and voices of older persons. And this is related also very much with the Decade for Healthy Aging. So in this sense, we can illustrate now with the following speakers what are the efforts on the ground and illustrate some of the work UNFPA is doing across the region. So I hope this will be fine, Jane, to continue with the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Thanks, colleagues. Hi, I'm Eduard. My colleague Eduard from Regional Office presented, and I'm coming from Moldova, which is a small country in Eastern Europe. I'm very glad to be here today to speak about the older persons and also young people. Moldova is a small country, and 20% of the country are people over 60, and also is a young country because over 20% of the country are young people. So we're thinking in the country office how to link two generations, young people with the older ones, and for example, how we can overcome the isolation that we had during the COVID. One of the ways actually was to engage young people and ask them to call older ones. We had a program where 300 older persons, most poorer older persons, received food packages, and we decided to call them, to engage 15 young people who will call these young people, these older persons. And from 300 persons that received food packages, only 200 had actually a land phone or a mobile phone. So only 200 had a way of communication. 100 older persons did not have any other form of communication than TV or radio, so we could not reach them. So this triggered us to another idea of how about developing digital skills of older persons, because the pandemic is still continue. The isolation is still in place. Older persons are told to not go out unless it's something extremely urgent. So we have just launched a new program with our partners, HelpAge International, in providing mobile phones to older persons and engaging young people on how to use these mobile phones, like basically social media, but then also requesting public services that are available online. We have just launched the program, but we have already the first results in the ground, seeing actually how young people are interested and open to share the knowledge on the one hand, and also on how older persons are open to discover new ways of communication, including learning on how to use a mobile phone for daily communication or for accessing, opening on bank account, for example, for payment of basic utilities, and so on and so forth. We're also engaging now the Minister of Health, Labor and Social Protection to see how the ministry actually can be engaged in this initiative to ensure the sustainability of the initiative. The ministry has a grants program that provides funding to grassroots organizations working with older persons. So they have decided that next year, one of the focus actually will be on developing digital skills of older persons by engaging young people. So we're trying to link older ones to young people and create intergenerational dialogue in a country where many young people are living for a better life, especially in European countries, and also trying, many older persons that remain in the country are alone. They don't have any other ways of communication than their neighbors, but now with the pandemic, they cannot go out, or with their family. And if they don't have a basic way of communication like a mobile or land phone, you cannot communicate. So what we're trying now to implement here in Moldova is to build digital skills of older persons by engaging young people so that we can facilitate this communication. That's in very short what we are doing right now, and will not take more time from that Jane allocated. Thank you very much.
Look, that's brilliant, Eduard. I think the sadness is that we all want to know more. So we hope to be connected, and resources, you know, we can populate and then put in our newsletter to send out. So we hope that we'll engage more. Thank you. And now we move to Leila.
Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be able to speak to you, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Leila. I work in Georgia, the country in the South Caucasus, sandwiched between the Russian Federation and Turkey, and also bordering with the Black Sea, with a population of 3.7 million. And I would like to share what UNFPA has been doing in this country to somehow respond and mitigate to the impact of COVID on older persons and most vulnerable older persons. So to give you a very brief context, in general, Georgia's response to the COVID-19 pandemic was recognized as effective, which resulted in relatively low incidence rate and mortality rate up to date. But the government has been also very open about its need for sustained assistance from the international community, both in the near term, in the immediate healthcare response, and in shielding also the vulnerable groups from immediate negative social and economic consequences, as well as more long-term assistance. As in other parts of the world, it is clear that the pandemic disproportionately affects vulnerable older people, particularly those living in rural and remote areas, marked with high poverty levels and barriers to accessing health and social services. In Georgia, more than 41,000 pensioners currently live alone in extreme poverty, and their vulnerability to COVID-19 is particularly high. Most of the elderly living in poverty are women, almost 80%, because of the longevity differences between men and women in Georgia. Stay-at-home and quarantine rules risk leaving elderly people really isolated and deprived of ready access to food and medicine. And while definitive assessments of the impact of COVID is not yet available, we are working currently on it. It is not difficult to visualize that the inequalities and vulnerabilities of elderly persons have been further aggravated. So in this context, UNFPA country office in Georgia has initiated and convened the UN agencies to address health and protection of older persons based on the UNFPA and UNDESA technical guidances and other UN policy papers on the subject. And through the funding from the UN COVID-19 Fund and UNFPA's core resources, the country office launched the project aiming at addressing the specific vulnerabilities of impoverished elder persons, especially those living alone in poor rural areas with limited social services and those elderly living in care homes. So to give you in a nutshell, almost 3,000 impoverished older persons living alone in 6 poor municipalities have been targeted and are reached out. Working in partnership with the Georgia Red Cross Society, UNFPA distributed personal protective gear and sanitation kits to older persons. Home care visits by Red Cross volunteers are being organized to deliver relief aid, food, as well as household supplies and prescription medicines to elderly citizens. Village doctors are targeted and provided with personal protective materials and some more information about COVID and older persons to be able to continue services and address existing chronic diseases among elderly. We have a specific state fund which provides funding to the care institutions and community care centers for elderly throughout Georgia, and these institutions have been supplied with personal protective gear and sanitary supplies to support them to continue the vital care services for elderly during the COVID-19. And very importantly, UNFPA also supporting the state care agency in elaboration and promotion of standards for COVID-19 prevention and control in residential institutions and community care homes for older people and people with disabilities, as well as in elaboration and institutionalization of the monitoring tool for this standard and capacity building of the state care agency to ensure compliance and implementation and compliance with the approved standards. So as you see, UNFPA's work is grounded on build back better approach, working on improving the system frameworks and standards of care, as well as meeting emergency immediate needs of vulnerable older persons. And we aim to continue this work, including within the frames of the regional program. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I would be glad to address. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Leila, and thank you for such a tight presentation. So we now welcome Zeljko to the floor. Thank you very much, Zeljko.
Thank you, Jane. I'm very glad to be here today with you. I will talk today about healthy aging centers, an initiative that was mentioned by Eduard at the beginning of this town hall. Healthy aging centers were started some 9-10 years ago in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that's southeastern part of Europe, trying to tackle one very important issue. Based on very extensive demographic changes and population aging, it was noted that many people are actually left alone in their homes. Younger generations are usually emigrating, and female older population is especially affected because women live longer and hence they stay alone in the end. Loneliness affects the whole social fiber of this population group and eventually leads to many mental health issues. So in attempt to try to resolve some of these issues, but also at the same time to utilize the capacities of older persons for community development. First center was opened by a local NGO Partnership for Public Health in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And afterwards, UNFPA recognized the importance of these centers in general for all the population, first in the country, and later on works extensively on presenting, on raising awareness on the importance of active and healthy aging in other countries in our region. From the perspective of COVID-19, it's very important to say that these centers are very beneficial, first of all, because they serve as safety nets for all of their members. It's very important to know that people don't feel alone, and that there is always a system behind them supporting them. And this was very, very important at the beginning of the pandemic, when all the older persons, all the persons over 65 years of age, were under lockdown for over a month. So many of them living alone, not being able actually to move in the community. They needed some public services, they needed some support. If nothing else, they needed a friend to talk to. And what is very important is that many of their members, members of the healthy aging centers actually learn how to use modern technologies. They are very active on the internet. They started using many applications, including, I don't know, Viber and Messenger, etc. So that actually helped a lot to all the members to overcome the pandemic issues, to communicate, to discuss certain position in which they were suddenly positioned. And what is most important is that eventually the Healthy Aging Center started broadcasting physical exercises over Facebook. So it was actually very helpful for all the members of Healthy Aging Centers to exercise every day at their homes in order to keep the physical strength. So as you can see, although I could really talk about this for a couple of days, I would rather stop here. And if people have any questions, I would be very glad to answer. Jane, you are muted.
It's always the case, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure I made some brilliant statement, Zeljko, and now I've forgotten it. But I thank you very much for those words that really highlighted, something of the work that you do on the ground. What we've really seen across these speakers is, the high level work, at the UN, setting strategies, but also the connections across UN and WHO, and then the innovation of work, at the ground level, at the grassroots level. So I think that really does provide a unique picture of some of the work in this particular region. So we call now for questions from the floor, and we do have some minutes, and I thank the speakers for being so tight. Greta Garniss, would you like to come forward and ask your question, make your statement?
Good morning. It's a very interesting presentation. Considering a lot of most of the industrialized countries, as you know, are having declining populations. I've just noticed in being out and about in my market area of Poland, the government has gotten very involved in getting the word out that they are willing to support Polish families that are willing to have more children, let alone have children. But what I'm wondering is, and I don't know if you've seen this in your countries, A, the promotion of the younger generation having more children, but B, I'm thinking that the promotion of the younger generation having more children will mean that benefits are going to be taken away from seniors that already have declining pensions and limited retirement resources. So it's interesting seeing both ends of the spectrum, and I just don't know what's going on in the middle anymore.
Well, I think that's an interesting sort of comment, and it does speak in a little way to some of the grassroots work that Eduard, talked with us about, about the intergenerational, solidarity. Eduard, did you want to make a comment to Greta?
Which Eduard?
Oh, well, either of them. Now, this is, so either one of them. You go first, Mr. Jongstra.
No, it was intergenerational. I think Eduard Mihalas should speak first on that.
Okay.
No, Eduard, go ahead.
Eduard, go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, well, the issue of having more babies, especially in countries that are getting older, is an issue which is very much in the public agenda, including on the policymakers and also political parties. So the role of UN is actually to play with that and just to provide arguments for the both sides, because if we want to have more babies in the country, that's not the solution. The main solution is actually to ensure that every woman and man have the desired number of children. So if they have any barriers in achieving the desired fertility, then the government should focus on that. And definitely communication and interaction between the generations is one of the solutions. For example, in Moldova, one of the problems is caregiving services for smaller kids. And many people in Moldova rely on the support of mothers, fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers to support them in growing these kids. And that's the role of the government actually, to support, to create, for example, childcare services so that older persons and older women can be engaged in other activities, in social activities. Because many of them are not, after their retirement, are not going out of their family, of their village, because 23% of Moldova's older population are living in poverty. So they cannot afford having any external activities rather than the ones in the family, on the one side. On the other side, I think young people can be the resource to finance this poverty of the older persons on the one hand, but also in advising on how you can do the family planning, or how you can communicate with your husband, wife in the family. So
I think that's a really comprehensive response, Eduard. I just want to pull out a fact that you may have said before, but 1 in 5 people in Moldova live in poverty. 23%. I mean, and I think we need to just keep coming back to this, constantly, that it's not about, the number of babies, it's about dealing with the issues that are within our environment every single day. So thank you. I call on Dr. Jackie Stark from Vienna. You're on mute, Jackie.
Okay. No, my question was, it was very interesting hearing about all the different projects in the countries that you represent, but are these projects that you presented, are they joint projects across the countries that are all represented here, or is it only in your country that you're able to do that? Because the joint work would be fantastic to expand to other countries.
Zeljko, would you like to respond to Jackie? Because you put a note in the chat box, so it would be interesting to get your perspective.
Yes, thank you. As I just answered in the chat box, this all started as a very localized initiative. And then we started as two parallel, one countrywide and one region-wide initiatives. Where on country basis, in the last 10 years, we supported opening, well, maybe supported, it's not the right word. We promote them, but local governments, local communities are actually opening new centers. So by today, there are 17 centers open across 9 municipalities in Bosnia. But we also expanded this idea and promoted it widely in the region. And by now, we can see centers opened in Serbia, in North Macedonia, and Leila could speak also about Georgia, where we had some very, very nice promotion last year. And by now, I think they opened a couple of centers as well. So it is, you know, the good idea, it's very easy to promote it. But again, it's up to local communities, local governments to pick up and actually address these issues in order to achieve sustainability. Thank you.
I think that word is critical, isn't it? You know, particularly, you know, I live in Canada, there's money for pilot projects, but for it to be a core part of society, it's the sustainability that is so difficult to attain. I'm calling on David Richardson because David has, you know, speaking to a point that you made, Zeljko. David Richardson?
Yes, I was just, I was interested in what Zeljko was saying about isolation or potential isolation. And it seems one of the difficulties most jurisdictions have is establishing some form of keep in touch program that is comprehensive, that reaches out to people who are isolated or potentially isolated, even if they haven't self-declared as such, to allow for quick and easy communication in a situation like the COVID-19, but still respects privacy and dignity, because it seems to be an ongoing challenge. Now, I'll address that to Zeljko and then others if the other jurisdictions have examples.
Thanks, David. Zeljko?
Well, in our case, it works well with members of the centers. What we still have to improve, let's say, is that it's not a countrywide initiative to support the overall older population. So for those communities, for those municipalities where the centers exist, yes, there is a significant impact on life of members of these centers. But unfortunately, there is very little outreach. So unless you decide to join the centers, you will not benefit out of this work. That's something that we hope for the next stage, to try to let's say, to organize some outreach activities where all the people in the community would benefit, because, you know, whether we like it or not all the people could fit in within 1 or 2 centers.
Okay, thank you. Leila, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you very much, Jane. Very, very good question. Thank you very much for asking this question. And I think I can bring the example from Georgia, where the Red Cross Society, the Georgia Red Cross Society, with the support of UNFPA and other international organizations, has very much expanded its social care, home care visits, especially to vulnerable older persons living alone. As I have mentioned, there is almost 41,000 such persons, older persons living in Georgia. So the volunteer network has been put in place, strengthened, expanded. These are mostly, of course, young people, specifically trained, and they are doing home care visits to somehow provide a relief, provide linkages with the also primary health care, provide support, you know, bring medicines and so on and so forth. So I think this was and their coverage is quite big, because this has been identified as one of the biggest challenges. And their hotline also for psychosocial support is in place, where they can provide telephone psychosocial support, as well as also extend the services to home. And we are very pleased that have been able to support this along with other partners within our project. So this is one of the solutions how to tackle this issue. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Leila. I just want to direct a question to Marta, and it's something, Marta, that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. The importance of IFA reaching beyond those sectors and disciplines that we usually work with. You know, we need to be working across stakeholders and across sectors. So could you just make a comment on that? It feels to me as though we need to be doing much more of that.
Yeah, actually, the COVID brought on the surface the silencing, so to say, being across the sectors, across the professions, and actually being an older person, your life is a complex issue, and you would prefer to receive a complex response. I'm currently in Bulgaria, I think Eduard mentioned, and just a few days ago there were issues of concern in one of the regions where the long-term care facilities are well served under the health ministry, but very much under concern, and the mortality rate is skyrocketing those who are under the social ministry, because they're not, the oversight is not there. So this just illustrates very powerful how the different sectors don't collaborate, speak to each other. As long as the needs are not addressed, we tend to address things by sectors rather than by the needs of people. So this is something we need to invest more, to look at the person, to center the services around their life and needs. And as professions and with different background, we collaborate much more to address those needs. So this, I guess, is the systemic shift in approach of those issues which we are embarking. And I hope the COVID is illustrating the need, but also giving examples. And some of the colleagues who actually brought those examples are fostering this dialogue between the different sectors to serve better the needs.
And thank you for that, Marta. And we would welcome, paragraphs from each of the speakers so that we could actually push them out through our networks about the work that's cross sectors and disciplines. I just want to have one last question before we turn it over to you to give us your takeaway messages. And it's really about something that Zeljko said, but it touches on all of you. It's about those people that are still invisible to us, those people that, will not go to healthy active centres. The mobility is so poor that they are in their home, that they are unreachable almost. So how do we actually really, move into understanding and reaching those in a real way to see how we create an environment that enables them to do what they value? So I'll just put it out to the panel to see if you've got any thoughts about that. For us, it's about reaching those unreachable at the moment. Any comment?
Maybe I can kick off.
Well, you kick off. Well done.
I think for me, what really holds us so much as societies is our attitudes, stereotypes, and beliefs. I'm myself at the age of 55, approaching a retirement. And I can see the attitude when you're in the market, when you are in a grocery shop, when you speak with your children, they think you're young, but when you speak with others, they say you're old. So this really, as you said, we are, as societies, we need to see older persons as a great contributor and valuable member of the society. And not the lens is the age, but is more as a person, who you are, where do you live, what are your needs, how the community can support you and serve you. And I think this is a big shift to be made.
Yeah, and look, thank you for that, because it does touch on the way that we think, feel and act about age and aging, which is one of the 4 action areas for the decade of healthy aging. As we move towards the hour, I'm going to ask each of these speakers, and thank you, for their takeaway messages. So I think that we're going to start from Zeljko and move up, and Eduard Jongstra, you're going to be the last person, so just give you the tip. So Zeljko, your takeaway message for our town hall attendees today.
I would stress out the importance of self-help, actually, given that the number of older persons is really rapidly growing in developed countries. It is not easily assumed that the states, the governments will be able to provide full support. Instead, people need to rely on self-help and need to rely on promotion of active and healthy aging from a very early age, because healthy lifestyles have no alternative. If you want to live long and to live a healthy life, you have to help yourself from the very early age.
Look, and thank you, because one of either you or your colleagues said life is a complex issue. And I think that that's so true. It's such a complex issue. So self-management, thank you. Leila?
Thank you. I believe in volunteerism and in community mobilization. And I think that along with I fully agree that government might not be able to fully support and reach out to all the increasing number of older persons in the country. And I think that community groups and volunteers, including young people and including older persons themselves, mobilizing around their needs, has a great potential. Along with, I'm also quite a strong proponent of the healthy and active aging, but also reaching out to the communities. So this would be my takeaway. Thank you.
Look, thank you. And volunteerism, is often in many countries, the stake in the sand. And so it's about how do we actually dissolve the barriers to older people continuing to volunteer if they want to, and across generations. So that then leads me to Eduard to talk with us about your take-home messages. Eduard?
Yeah, thank you, Jane. When the pandemic hit Moldova, I was away from my family. So I thought what I can do for my family, with my grandmothers, how I can communicate more. So and then thinking in general for the Moldovan society, what we can do more to communicate with our family members. So that's why we launched this program of engaging young people in communicating more with the older ones. The ones that are isolated, to provide mobile phones, develop digital skills so that we can be connected at least online, if not physically, because many people cannot afford buying a mask to go out. So building intergenerational dialogue to keep communicating between us, to keep connections, regardless, we'll have this pandemic, but maybe we'll have many more. But now the most important thing is to keep communicating with our family and with our community, not necessarily being a family member, but our neighbor. So communication with the family and neighbors. Thank you.
There's 2 things that really sort of made me sit up then when you were talking. And it was about the fact that when COVID hit, what could you do in your family and how that precipitated. So I think it comes back to, you know, what's going on in our life and how can we actually use this as a prompt. The other thing, and I have to check in with you, Eduard. So are you saying that some people are not able to afford to wear a mask, and that's one of the I mean, I'm not sure how many people know that on this town hall, but so that's the case, is it, Eduard? Okay.
Yeah, almost 80% of the older people cannot afford buying a mask.
Well, that will sit with me for many days. Thank you for making that statement. And Marta.
Yes, yeah, actually, yeah, the demographic changes, the aging, hand in hand with COVID-19, it seems are the greatest challenges of the 21st century, although we just embarked recently. The multi-stakeholder response, the diversity of professions needs to be engaged in order for societies to adapt to this tremendous change. And I feel that the COVID-19 is a wake-up call for us to restructure our behavior as individuals, to rethink our sectors, societies, professional engagement, so that we can make the most of our longer lives and embark on a decade of opportunities that can last with us over the life course, not only when we are young or when we are old. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very thoughtful response, and you keep bringing us back to, you know, that this life course approach, it's not about the age, it's about the function, it's about the environment. So it helps us to return, you know, to a common message that actually transcends, you know, all cultures and all demographic shifts in socioeconomic areas. So thank you. Eduard, Jongstra, your final comment.
Thank you. I hadn't actually prepared anything, so, but I do have several. I was thinking about saying, look, in regards to responding to these demographic issues, there is not one silver bullet. Well, that was one takeaway message, but it felt a little bit like an open door, a fairly obvious thing to say. Then I thought, listening to Eduard Mihalas and Zeljko also, especially, that maybe for our listeners, audience, it might be good to emphasize that even though we are dealing here with countries within Europe, these are countries that are experiencing conditions that are not so much better than a country that is typically classified as a low developed country. And as you know, within the countries, you also have grave differences, fine, all of that. But you have already observed yourself, you know, as Eduard said, a large proportion of people did not have access to a cell phone. Well, I know many African countries where 98% of the population has access to a cell phone. So without doing more words, I think the message has come home. You know, we are getting a dichotomy within, or we're having a dichotomy within Europe. And we need to recognize that and maybe put more emphasis to supporting for those who are in Europe from our people, our audience, supporting our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduard. You know, some of the takeaways for me is the importance of multi-sectoral, multidiscipline relationships and partnerships. You know, we talk silos and we say they're difficult, but let's be the bridge that actually connects us together. I think that's critical. You know, poverty exists in every country, and I think, Eduard, Jongstra, you've clearly said that we can't talk about Europe per se. You know, the challenges within countries are very real, as Eduard talked about in terms of, you know, the affordability of a mask. We've also talked about, you know, the grassroots work, the innovation, you know, across generations. I've found that it's been a very rich town hall for me. I've learned a lot and I want to learn more. So if you're interested in having the UNFPA team back again, to drill down on some of these issues, please let us know. I want to just mention that next week is a very important week in the lives of those that have been living and talking about aging for decades. And that is that we celebrate next year the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And that's something to honour, to be proud of, and to stand tall in these very difficult geopolitical times. So, and at the same time, we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the International Day of Older Persons. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of events going on, and some of you have populated in the chat box some of those. We're going to be busy, but in the busyness of events, just take a moment and honour the fact that we have a United Nations. And my slogan is, we're all doing the best that we can with what we know. And so as we go in to celebrate the UN 75 years and IDOP with a focus on the pandemic and how we can use this to change the way we think, feel and act about older people, just have a think about yourself and your environment, and be strong in connection with others. So thank you for the town hall. As we move into next week, our next town hall will be with CEO Michael Adams from SAGE and IFA Director Samantha Edmonds, that will be talking about and leading a conversation about addressing inequalities of older LGBTQ people. So thank you for our remarkable speakers, the energy that they bring to this conversation, and we look forward very much to having the UNFPA team back again, and also you being with us going forward. So thank you, stay safe and stay well. All the best.